Hello my beautiful friends, it's Amanda here, and today we're going to be talking about this palette from e.l.f. This is the Nude Rose Gold palette. As soon as I opened this palette, my very first thought was, this is a dupe for the Urban Decay Naked 3. If you haven't seen the Naked 3 palette, I'm not really sure how that's possible, but this is what it looks like. As you can see when you look at the palettes side by side, they are very similar. They're laid out similarly. They have very similar shades. The big difference is that the e.l.f. palette has 10 shades while the Naked 3 palette has 12. There is a very significant difference in the size of these palettes. As far as the actual product goes, there's not that big of a difference. The e.l.f. palette has 14 grams of product while the Naked 3 has 15.6 grams. So there's only 1.6 grams of difference, which kind of shocked me when you look at the size of the packaging and also the price. This e.l.f. Nude Rose Gold palette retails for $10, while the Urban Decay Naked 3 is $54. This e.l.f. palette does have a pretty decent mirror inside here, but the packaging is very plain and simple. There are no shade names on the back. With the Naked 3, of course, part of what you're paying for is just the Urban Decay name. Also, it has very beautiful packaging. I do like the packaging of this palette. There is a larger mirror in here, and the Naked 3 also comes with a double-ended brush, which the e.l.f. palette does not have. Of course, we love packaging, we love extras, but when it comes down to it, what really matters is the eyeshadow itself. I am wearing one of these palettes on each eye, so I'll show you a side-by-side tutorial comparison of those later, but first I want to show you some swatches. I have a full swatch photo of each palette in its entirety side by side so that you can see how truly similar these palettes are. I'm also going to show you some groups of quick finger swatches so that you can get a closer look at the most similar shades. The Urban Decay shadows do have shade names and the e.l.f. shadows do not, so I'll just refer to those as 1 through 10. The Urban Decay shadows are on top and the corresponding e.l.f. Nude Rose Gold shadows are below. Because the e.l.f. palette has 2 less shades, when you compare it to the Naked 3, you kind of have to ask which shades are missing, and in this case, shade number 8 in the e.l.f. palette is standing in for these 3 shades in the Naked 3, Liar, Factory, and Mugshot. I do think that was a smart choice. These 3 shades in the Naked 3 are just not that different that I feel like I'm missing anything. Another big difference is shade number 10 and the shade Black Heart in the Naked 3. They are the last shades in both palettes, and when they're swatched, I think they look really similar. But in person, you can tell that Black Heart has a bunch of red glitter, and shade number 10 in the Nude Rose Gold also has glitter, but it's more of a gold glitter. Once they're applied to the eye, particularly with a brush, I do think they look quite similar. You definitely notice in person when you look at the shades side by side that Black Heart has that red micro glitter that the e.l.f. palette just doesn't have. Now that you've seen these palettes swatched side by side, let's jump into the eye look where I'm going to use one palette on each one of my eyes, and you can see how they perform next to each other. Then I'll round up all my thoughts at the end. I'm going to start off by priming both of my eyes with my favorite eye base. It's the MAC Paint Pot in the shade Painterly. Then I'm going to set that eye base using the matte white shadow in each palette. In the e.l.f. palette, it's shade number 1. And I will be using the same brush, just cleaning it off with my color switch, and then going over to the Urban Decay palette using the shade Strange. Now I'm going to work on my crease color. I'm using shade number 4 from the e.l.f. palette, and I did have to build this one up just a little bit more than I needed to with the shade from the Naked 3. So I did have to do 2 layers with this e.l.f. shadow. Using the same brush again, I'm going into the Urban Decay shade called Limit, and just building that really softly into the crease. Only needed 1 layer with this shadow. Now we're going to start to build up a little bit of depth. I'm using shade number 7 from the e.l.f. palette, and just a small fluffy brush, building that on the outer part of my lid, and then with a flat brush right along my lower lash line to add a little bit of smokiness. I keep showing you this step just so that you know I tried to make this comparison as fair as possible. Here I'm repeating the exact same steps that I just did using the Urban Decay shade Nooner, adding some depth to the eyelid and also a little bit of smokiness to that lower lash line Now I'm using a really dense flat brush to take shade number 9 from the Nude Rose Gold palette, and I'm packing that just on the outer 1/3 of my lid. I'm keeping that just on the eyelid and not in the crease. You guessed it, color switch party again. I'm doing the same thing on the other eye using the Urban Decay shade called Dark Side, packing that on the outer part of my lid, and this one was way more pigmented, so I had to be really careful with this shade to make the eyes look the same. Now I'm going to use my finger to apply shade number 2 from the e.l.f. palette right across my eyelid, focused mostly on the inner part. And then I'm going to use a different finger to apply dust. This one I had to use a really light hand because the Urban Decay shade was way brighter. Lastly, I curled my lashes and added some L'Oreal Lash Paradise mascara, and that's the finished look. I don't think they look exactly alike, but I think they're so close that I could wear this makeup out and no one would ever notice the difference. All right, we've done the swatches, we've tested them side by side with eye brushes on the eyelid. It's the moment of truth. Are they dupes? I don't think that they're dupes, but I do think that this e.l.f. palette is a great alternative. The Urban Decay shadows are just a little bit more pigmented. Both the mattes and the shimmers just have better color payoff. I do think the Urban Decay shadows perform just a little bit better. However, for $10, I am super impressed with this e.l.f. palette. It may not be quite as bright, quite as pigmented, but it's still pretty darn good. As far as the wear time goes, I'll leave an update in the description and tell you how both of my eyes wear today. If you're curious about lasting power, just check down there and I will update you. I can't really call it a dupe because the shades aren't exactly the same, the textures aren't exactly the same, but it is a fabulous alternative. That $10 price tag is definitely right. You are gonna get very, very similar looks out of these two palettes. I am a sucker for packaging, and I actually do like the brush that comes with this palette, but you know what? I can bust out my Real Techniques brushes and make this work just as well. I'd love to know your thoughts on these palettes. Do you think they're dupes? Do you have any favorite dupes for expensive palettes? Leave a comment and let us know what you think. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye. Can you believe I actually did my hair for the first time in like 2 years? It's sad because it's true. But the news, dang it. Rolls gold. Nude rose gold. Nude rose gold. The nude rose gold. Rolls gold. Dang it. Urban Decay. I just cannot talk today. What are you even talking about? They're both good. That's what I'm getting at. And as soon as filming is over, the hair goes all right back. I'm just not meant for fancy hair. I'm just not. I mean, this is gonna drive me crazy. Such a lady. Got stuff to do. Got stuff to do, people. Let's go. Would it really be a video if my dog wasn't barking in the background? Such a hot mess. And I'll round up all my thoughts at the end. Round up. That twang slips in there every once in a while. Somebody commented on my MAC Hyper Real Glow palette that they couldn't see my highlighter on my face. Am I seeing things? Like, I can see that. That is a insane highlight. Am I imagining this? Because that's definitely there. Oh, okay. Freaking mini blinds. Mini blind contouring. Highlights still popping though.